Testing, testing audio. Testing.
connect with and learn from the global community, which includes being a big supporter of CISR and its work around the world and at JMU. Thank you, Dr. Cole. Over the past 25 years, CISR has engaged with its partners at James Madison University and in the Global Mine Action and post-conflict communities to provide support, enact change, promote recovery and resilience within our local and international communities. Since 1996, CISR, through its professional staff and network of experts, has played a leadership role in shaping the mine action community and promoting the exchange of information across that community of practice through its landmark publications, management training, and many field-based projects in mine risk education, survivor assistance, and disability rights promotion. The Center has accomplished this work with support from a range of sponsors, with the U.S. Department of State topping that list, but also including other U.S. government agencies, the United Nations Development Program, the Organization of American States, and many non-governmental and international organizations working across the field of mine action and conventional weapons destruction. CISR has lived up to the initial expectations of the visionaries who established it, including former Senator John Warner, former JMU President Ron Carrier, and founding director Dennis Barlow. That it served as a center of excellence to promote the success of this nascent field of practice as it strived to ensure people living in countries littered with explosive remnants of war could once again walk the earth in safety. It is fitting that we reflect on CISR's work over the decades today, the United Nations International Day of Peace. I began working for CISR in 1999 on a part-time basis, on a grant project to support the development of the International Mine Action Standards. Now a mainstay of the community of practice, but then existing in only a limited fashion. I stayed on longer than I could have ever anticipated, eventually moving to full-time status and then into the center's leadership. It has been my great honor to work with my colleagues at the center and with JMU faculty partners over the years. It also has been exciting to work as part of the mine action community these past 2 decades. I never dreamed I would engage in this type of work. It truly opened up a new world to me. And tonight, I get to share some of the history of CISR's 25 years of work in the mine action community through the stories of 3 JMU faculty members and 1 JMU alum who joined in the work of the center, enriched it, and gave so much of themselves to the mission of making the world a safer place for people impacted by the presence of explosive weapons. These 4 individuals, along with many other JMU faculty and students and external partners, are an important part of the center's history. We also know their experiences circled back around to impact their teaching, scholarship, and other professional activities, thereby helping to bring the global community to JMU. I've had the pleasure to work with each of them and know they all have fascinating stories to tell. So I will move on with very brief introductions, and then we'll get to the storytelling and the sharing of information. Dr. Ken Rutherford is a professor in the Department of Political Science at James Madison University. He served as director of the Center for International Stabilization and Recovery at JMU for 10 years. He was a Peace Corps volunteer in Mauritania. He worked with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in Senegal and conducted humanitarian emergency relief in Kenya and Somalia, and served as a Fulbright scholar in Jordan. Rutherford co-founded the Landmine Survivors Network and escorted Princess Diana on her last humanitarian mission to visit landmine survivors in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And he was a prominent leader in the international campaign to ban landmines, which won the 1997 Nobel Peace Prize. He has received several humanitarian awards and has published 5 books. Most recently, America's Buried History, Landmines in the Civil War. He holds a PhD in government from Georgetown University and a BA and MBA degrees from the University of Colorado. We're very glad to have him with us tonight. As a professor in the graduate psychology program here at JMU, she promotes resilience and attachment in children through projects around the world, including in Sri Lanka and India following the tsunami. Dr. Stewart designed and implemented intervention and research programs addressing psychosocial problems resulting from landmines in Bosnia, Jordan, Lebanon, Mozambique, and Vietnam. She was part of a CISR team that established an early mine risk education program in Quang Tri, Vietnam in 1998-1999, and was instrumental in the We Love Life MRE project in Jordan in 2008 to 2010. She's also served as a consultant following Hurricane Katrina, the 9/11 attacks, the Virginia Tech shootings, and the Central Virginia. She provided play-based therapeutic services to children deployed Virginia National Guard soldiers, and is the founder and president of the Virginia Association for Play Therapy, and has written extensively on that subject, and has received several awards related to her work as a scholar, teacher, and practitioner. We welcome Dr. Stewart tonight. Is Zane B. Shoker Professor of Entrepreneurship and a Professor of Management in the College of Business at James Madison University. He earned his PhD in Strategic Management and Entrepreneurship from Washington State University, and he researches, publishes, and lectures in the fields of strategic management, entrepreneurship, and innovation, teaching both in undergraduate and the MBA programs here at JMU. And he's published widely in the field of study and field of work. He has participated in more than 10 senior managers courses with the Center for International Stabilization, both those held at JMU and in several locations around the world. So we look forward to hearing more about his experience. Dr. Gary Coxe. He is currently serving on detail as Strategy Advisor to the Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs. In this role, he provides strategic insight and coordination as the PM Bureau executes annual security assistance globally, oversees the sale and transfer of sensitive technology, and leads U.S. government coordination with the Department of Defense on defense plans and security assistance. And Dr. Coxe, in sort of his regular job at the State Department, serves as a program manager in the Bureau's Office of Weapons Removal and Abatement, providing oversight and management of programs in East Asia and the Pacific. And he has previously worked in a similar role for programs in South and Central Asia, Northern Africa, and the Middle East. He holds a PhD in strategic leadership from James Madison University, as well as undergraduate and graduate degrees. Prior to his career at the State Department, he worked in several capacities at CISR on a range of projects, concluding his time at CISR as a program coordinator. So enough of initial introductions. I'd like to move to the first question, and you will learn a lot more about this wonderful panel of very special people we have with us tonight. So, first question. Please describe your relationship to CISR and how, why you became involved with the work of the center, and any sort of travel abroad that you did as part of your work with CISR. Can you start with Anne?
You bet.
Volunteering, okay. Testing. Okay. All right. So, relationship with CISR. I'm a clinical psychologist, a play therapist, and a family therapist. So if you give me a question to comment about relationships, we could talk. Okay. So my relationship with Scissor is enduring, it's sustaining, it's nourishing. The word that probably captures it best is I'm in love with Scissor and the people there and the work that we do. The word I'll land on though is that it's meaningful. It's a very, very meaningful relationship. I first started with my involvement with what was then called the Humanitarian Demining Center at James Madison University. It was an innovative project that was hatched with Senator Warner and former JMU President Ron Carrier. And I was invited to be on it because of my work in doing interdisciplinary endeavors, mostly around child abuse and child sexual abuse, and also collaborations with nursing and other, as a psychologist, with other disciplines around campus. When I first was asked, though, I actually thought the person said, could you help with a project to get rid of mines? I heard mines. I don't care for mines, but I didn't know that we needed to get rid of it. Okay? So I was a little perplexed, and then they helped me understand it wasn't mines in Southwest Virginia. This was, remember, 1996, and my mind was just not going to register about mines. Princess Diana and Dr. Rutherford helped change that globally. So the connection there began. I still wasn't sure what I was doing at the table as a child psychologist. And then I looked at the statistics about who gets injured from landmines. I looked at the prevalence data on landmines. And I thought, well, boy, it's a good thing I'm here. And I felt that way on and off ever since. Sometimes I have to search a little bit for the relevance, but it hasn't ever been lost to me. That still continues today with the persons who are injured and the importance of doing the landmine work. After I started with Humanitarian Demining Center, and that was with Colonel Barlow, then we changed to the Mine Action Information Center, and had a project first in Bosnia, then in Vietnam, then later in Jordan, and then lastly the Pathways to Resilience project that was in Beirut. And some of the people who I want to just quickly do a shout out to are Hassan Hamdan and Terry Wessel. I think I saw you sneak in, girl. So these are partners, both within JMU and then globally. What was the last part that I'm supposed to talk about? Why? Travels. Well, that's where I travel. There's spots around the world. Before then, I grew up in Indiana on a farm, and I had gone to Lebanon Junction, Kentucky for cheerleader camp. And then that really was about the extent of the travels, except one quick trip into Canada. So it broadened my world. I felt like Suzanne, that I didn't ever imagine I would do this work. And I'm eternally grateful that I have this opportunity.
So the question is, how were we introduced to Scissor? It goes back, for me anyway, 27 years or so to 1994. I was injured by a landmine in 1993, the year before in Somalia. And I just thought it was a unique experience. Anyway, in 1994, I was invited to testify before Congress, the only humanitarian landmine testimony or congressional hearing, or others, other testimonies about the global landmine crisis. Nobody knew what this problem was about. And it was killing and maiming more people than chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons. In fact, for me personally, I thought it was a unique story, but it's a very common story. Tens of thousands a year. I was brought over to the Pentagon right after the hearing, the White House and the Pentagon, and I met Lieutenant Colonel Barlow. Humanitarian demining was actually housed with the military in 1994. Now it's with State Department, Gary Coxe and his team over at State Department. And Lieutenant Colonel Barlow was running humanitarian demining operations through special operations, because you can't leave a country militarily worse than you got there. Cambodia, Vietnam. Anyway, a couple years later, we stayed in touch. In 1996, I was a graduate student at Georgetown, and Lieutenant Barlow he came out of Iraq, I think, Operation Provide Comfort. 1996, the center's here was launched. It was the Mine Action Information Center. The Humanitarian Demining Center. I can't remember what building it was, but I remember driving down to JMU for the first time in my life in 1996, 25 years ago. It's hard to believe. And just being a grad student and talking to Colonel Barlow about landmines and all that. So that was my introduction. I thought it was very unique that it was a tool in the toolbox to alleviate the global landmine crisis and bring in the assets of academia and all that academia does as a political neutral player in the dog-eat-dog world of charity fundraising and government kind of elbowing each other to get to the front in the United Nations who wants all the credit. Sorry. But that's, why am I looking at you? I don't know. So anyway, there's a lot of players in the world to solve this problem. And the issue is that the poorest of the poor are affected by it. And whatever assets that could bring the fairness problem is awesome. And JMU's at the forefront in terms of the academic community and rallying people together to help solve that issue. So that's my introduction to Scissor. It was an honor to be the director, a huge honor. In terms of travels, anywhere you would expect that there was conflict or emerging conflict, we, meaning the royal we at Scissor, have been there. Tajikistan, Lebanon, with Hassan and Ann, Jordan, a lot of Iraq. So, but I'll just stop right there. So anywhere there's landmines in like 80 different countries around the world, and I think we've been or operated or given speeches in like 40 or 50 of them.
All right, so Faris Musa, my story goes back to 2008 when I was looking for jobs. At the time, I was in the process of completing my doctorate degree, and I was all the way on the West Coast, so I was studying in Washington State University, and I started getting to fly out to different universities, mainly on the East Coast and the Midwest. In the end, I lucked out, and I had a couple of different options, but I was considering JMU as one of the places that I wanted to come. But I didn't know much. I lived most of my time on the West Coast, so I didn't know much about JMU at the time, and I'm trying to learn a little bit more. And at the time, the JMU team in the management department that was trying to recruit me, they kind of wanted to sweeten the deal. So, so they mentioned to me the relationship with Scissor, and they said, hey, if you come here, then we will, we'll be able to put you on this team that works with Scissor. At the time, it was not called Scissor. But I was like, okay, well, let me learn about this. So I started learning more and more about this. And for me, that was kind of the thing that was like, okay, I gotta do this. It totally changed my, I was very excited about coming to JMU, but then this kind of was the cherry on the cake to be able to work with Scissor and suddenly not only have the impact that we have on the lives of our students every day, but hopefully have an impact on managers across the globe. So that was kind of when it started. I arrived here in 2009 in the fall, and then in October, I was already on my first trip to Jordan at the time, working with Suzanne and the center, and it was an amazing experience getting involved. Of course, I had a lot to learn, and but that was kind of my story of starting out. And then after that, the year after that, we also went to Jordan again for training, and I worked with amazing faculty. And I still do, and some of them are here. Bob Eliason, I think I saw him walk in, and Fernando Vargas is here too. So thank you for all the support throughout. We've had amazing faculty across the entire College of Business and across all the other departments and colleges that have participated over the years with the training, whether it was here in Harrisonburg or overseas. So that is that story. And the travel, we were very fortunate. We got to work in Jordan 3 times, Tajikistan a couple of times, Croatia once, and then here in the United States a number of times, 5, 6 times. Yeah, that's nice.
I'm Gary Coxe, and my story started with Scissor in April of 2005, and since we're doing shout-outs to the room, Nicole Knightsey in the front row gave me my second job ever on campus. My distinguished panelists, colleagues, have a lot higher-minded reasons for being up here this evening. I needed a summer job. I was staring down a summer in Harrisonburg and not wanting to go to the small town in Maryland that I am from. And that means paying rent and utilities. And as an English major, you are deeply unemployable at a lot of things, except for editing a magazine about landmines, apparently. And Nicole took a chance and gave me a job. I had had very little editing experience, but English majors will do anything for money. And that started the very, very long process that brought me here, the relationship that we had. I will tell you, when I told my parents I was working with a magazine about mines, being in Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley, they thought it was about coal mines. My mom freaked out when I said landmines, and I told her that I would never see a landmine. We're in Virginia, it's fine, don't worry. And then the very first trip that Suzanne sent me on was to Bogota, Colombia, kidnapping capital of the world at the time, and I don't think my parents really have ever forgiven Suzanne or Ken for the places that they sent me, including South Sudan. Don't worry, it was right after independence. People were super optimistic about it at the time. Geneva and some other places, but I can't stress enough what a serendipitous thing it is for all of us to be here, to have this resource on campus, because there's no reason why an English major should be sitting here talking to you about landmines and the relationship that JMU has kind of with the world in that context.
I think this one works too. Yes. Okay. Next question. Just share another fun story or experience of your time working with the center.
I think I'd like to do the stories across time, and they are tied to relationships. After the first trip to Sarajevo, where I saw partnerships between persons who were commercial deminers, persons who were working for the UN, and the university, I was deeply impressed with the commonalities across all of them. And that resulted over time in a conference being held at JMU that brought those different constituencies together. Those are persons that I'm still in contact with. And you were there, weren't you, or was Jerry there? Okay. Well, it was a conference at JMU out at Wintergreen, but you've been to a gazillion. Okay, that's what I thought. So that project then morphed into the work in Vietnam. And I think up here, every once in a while, you'll see me in 1997, 98, and 99 working with children that are in Quang Tri province. That's in the middle of Vietnam. It's where the demilitarized zone is. Again, that is not a class I ever took in graduate school or undergraduate. It was how to identify landmines or how to work in foreign countries. And the partners that I was used to working with were, like I said, it was psychology, nursing, psychology, health sciences. This was partnering with the Women's Union, which was a really strong force in Vietnam, and Madame Song was the head of it. And then the other group was the Communist Party. And I thought, I don't know about that. What's that going to be like? So I had to do my own kind of awareness and reflection and soul searching, and what biases did I have, which were mighty. And what I found repeatedly in that country and in Sarajevo and in Jordan and in Lebanon is that people come together on behalf of their children, time and time and time again. So Madame Song helped introduce me to the persons and the partners that she had in the Communist Party. We partnered then with the schools and developed materials to first assess the risks of landmines in the area and then develop a program for it. The program, because I'm a play therapist, was called Play It Safe. And we had JMU student, art student, develop these cards and then have them vetted by persons in Vietnam to make sure they were culturally appropriate. The projects then involved some artwork again. Let me pass those around. And then after you get rid of those, Nicole, could I ask you to unravel that? The project then involved all the schools in Quang Tri province, and there were thousands of kids who, with the help of their teachers, did artwork that gave messages about how to stay safe from landmines. You can stand up. So we had a contest, and it was a huge contest. Had thousands of participants, and we recruited artists from the area to judge them. We ended up with having, I think, 36 third prizes, about 82 second prizes, and about 20-some first prizes, to be able to have these made, and then made into calendars and made into posters that went around all of Quang Tri province. Quang Tri province then had a big flood, and so JMU was incredibly responsive, and the Humanitarian Demining Center, now Scissors, was responsive. They lost all of their school papers, so we helped get those published with messages about how to stay safe from landmines in them. The idea about relationships came back the morning after 9/11. On 9/12, one of the very first emails I got was from Madam Song, my partner back in Vietnam in the Women's Union. She knew that JMU was close to Washington, D.C., and she knew about the attacks, and she wanted to know, was my family okay? Was I okay? And she told the story about how important it was for her that JMU and I came over to help, and Dr. Wessel came over to help share worries with them, share the worries about the landmines. So that's one story of relationship. Another one has to do with the time in Jordan and the meaningful relationships that we made there, the number of children that we were able to get information out to. It's in tens of thousands, and some of the children were ones that ended up in some of the camps up in Mafraq on the border with Syria later on. That work was done in collaboration with wonderful partners in the Jordanian government. And then the last one has to do with the work in Lebanon. And with that one, there was a woman who Hassan and I were talking before this panel began about memories, and we both remembered the same two people predominantly. And these are also people, because of Facebook, that I'm in continued contact with, and thank goodness for translation on Facebook so we can stay in connection. This is a woman who had lost both legs due to a landmine injury, and we had done play-based activities to be able to connect their healing with the messages that they wanted to be able to provide back to their teams. And at night, we were all really, really tired, and I got a special message from her, could I come down to her room? So I did. And there was a party. There was a big old party. All the women from the project were in that room dancing up a storm. And I'd never seen anything like it, that much activity in that small of a space. And so the warm relationships of work and play were established then. Another person did an activity called Helping Hands. Some of these persons had lost their hands. They had residual limbs due to landmine injuries. So we asked and invited them to do that, and of course to not participate, and embedded it before to make sure that it wasn't be an affront to do this. And we were assured, no, get over yourself. We know what hands look like. And the purpose was to talk about who gives you a helping hand. So one man who had actually lost one limb due to a landmine injury had been wearing long sleeves. And so he did his helping hand, wrote on the digits who helps him or what helps him. Then he disappeared for a while. At the end of the project, or actually at the end of each day, somebody will stand up and say, here's what I enjoyed about the day, here's what was meaningful. And what he said is, ever since the injury, he had worn long sleeves. And now, as he was telling the story, he had on short sleeves. And he said it was because of the work from that day and the kind of exploration and acceptance that he'd been able to have.
Oh, probably well, I don't know if they're my favorite, but one of the most impactful was in Vietnam. We were doing CISR was doing a project for peer support for people with disabilities. And there's a lot of disabilities in Vietnam, and at the broader, specifically, but the broad level in developing countries around the world. And we're doing self-introductions in a circle. And we had brought in people with disabilities from the central part of Vietnam, probably the poorest of the poor, because it's very far away from Hanoi. It's rural, and there's a young woman in a wheelchair who was speaking, self-introducing. My translator was translating, a good friend of mine, Ken Rutherford, and everybody started crying, and even the translator started crying. I was like, what's going on? What's she saying? And the translator was unable to speak. Kim was unable to speak. And when she composed herself after the young woman was finished with her introduction, Kim took a deep breath and said that the woman was so grateful to be there because she had thought she was a freak her whole life for being in a wheelchair in a village in Vietnam, and she had never seen anybody in a wheelchair until that day. And there were like 3 or 4 others in wheelchairs. And it just shows you the power of relationships, peer support, and for me anyway, it was just the blessing of being together as survivors and missing one's limbs. You are considered different in many societies. And so that was very impactful for me, just as a disabled person, but also as someone who was Scissor to help influence positive change, just with small little ways. And the ripple effect could be wide. Another memory was Scissor produces a lot of things, but one of them is to walk the earth in safety. It was Heather somewhere out there, the editor, she's in the back row. Blake, I saw Blake. Was Blake here?
Yeah, he's in another room with the live stream.
Oh, okay. Amy and Jennifer, who actually just flew to Colorado this morning, my wife saw her at the airport this morning, produced To Walk the Earth in Safety. And it's the annual report for the Department of State, Gary's Weapons Removal and Abatement Office. It's every single taxpayer dollar is reported that goes overseas to destroy conventional weapons and some other issues like victim assistance. But the honor of Scissor to do that report every year. The United States is the world's largest donor in mine action times X. If you add up the next 10 countries in the world who donate to the sector, the United States contribution still outweighs that. And the devoted employees at our Department of State is unbelievable. In 2014, I was at the UN presenting that report on behalf of Scissor, realizing that, as an American landmine survivor, being with Scissor at the UN, presenting the U.S. government report with the Department of State in the room, Gary's boss, Dan Brown, in the room, was a huge honor. I almost felt like full circle coming in my life. You always try to find a reason, I think, why bad things happen to people. And I don't know, like in the mirror, what I say to myself, except like being alive is awesome. you know, when you had that second chance at life and could still walk your eulogy. And I felt like that was a special moment just in my life for being an American, presenting this report to the UN that Scissor produced. Was special.
I'm gonna take you a little bit, I'm gonna look at it from a different perspective. I'm gonna tell you my favorite stories from the point of view of a GMU student. There was a GMU student that used to work with the center. Her name was Paige. And I don't remember exactly how old she was at the time, but I think she just had finished her bachelor's when she went to Tajikistan the first time. So she's 22 years old. We fly out there, and one of my colleagues who's here with me was with me on the flight. We arrived, and Paige was supposed to meet us in the airport, and to try to help us, get back to the hotel, pretty much. And when you get out of the airport over there, you get out of the plane, then we had to go into this room where they basically give you a visa. But there's a couple of officers, and they're working, and there's big piles of paper, and there's a lot of people filled in that room, just sitting there waiting. And we don't speak the language, and we're just sitting there waiting for our turn, and we're like, eventually somebody will talk to us. We gave them our paper, the paperwork and everything, and we're sitting there, and then just out of nowhere, we see there's this little tiny window behind the officers, and then this young woman, Paige, suddenly appears from the window. So she's outside of the airport, but she appears, she figures out that we're in that room, and she starts talking to the officers and telling them, you need to get on it. We need the faculty out of there, and it just blew my mind how this young woman that was just going, a student, was just going through JMU program and all that, now is all the way across the world with the confidence to come in and talk to officers and be giving them, directions, and in another country, and insisting on, we have our time schedule and we need to get them out. And it just totally blew my mind on how much she has grown in just that little period of time, just with a couple of those experiences with Scissor and what she has learned. So that was one little story there. Another story happened here where we invited some of the senior managers that came to one of the training courses to talk to some of our students. So we did a panel like this, and they were telling our students about some of the challenges that they face, and what they have to deal with every day. And again, this is from a student perspective. After they left, and we ended class, and everybody was dismissed, a couple of students waited for me. And after that, they told me how they were just so impacted by this work that it opened their mind to a whole other world that they didn't know even existed, and how they decided that the purpose must have to do with something, is going to have to change to do with something that is going to make the world a better place. And that it's not acceptable that the number 2 killer of young kids around the world is mind. I think that's what the number was, or at the time, or something like that. And that they're going to do something about it. And it totally, it was very emotional, to see that impact on, again, very, very young students that wanted to also make a difference. So those are 2 of my favorite stories that have to do with our young students, and how I believe the relationship with Scissor was super impactful and changed them, I think, forever. Paige from there went on to do a master's degree, and I don't know exactly where she is now, but I know she's been very successful and doing great things.
So that's an excellent memory, and Paige is a great example of some of my favorite memories, which are tied to the senior managers courses that we've had here, that Suzanne and I organized for several years, and took on the road, and the ones in Tajikistan and Jordan and Vietnam are lovely. But the ones that really stood out to me are the ones that we got to host here on our home turf to show the hospitality of JMU. And you know, for those of you who have ever run a conference before or ever tried to do logistics, it's an absolute nightmare. Children are better than adults. Adults do not listen. And from arrival at Dulles Airport until departure at Dulles Airport, Suzanne and I just absolutely pulled our hairs out trying to follow 30 adults who, I don't know how they get lost in Harrisburg. There's nothing here. There's only so many places to go. And one of the places that they always wanted to go that was a highlight, I know, for everyone in terms of the JMU experience was D Hall. Old D Hall, obviously, RIP. The thing that always stood out to me, and without fail, almost every year, the saddest departure that we had was the last lunch at D Hall. Not just for grilled cheese Thursdays or what have you, but it used to be, it probably still is, very slow here in the summer. And a crowd of 30 students, but 30 adults from landmine impacted countries who run their national response programs to landmines and explosive remnants of war come to JMU to learn from our faculty. They spend time with students, but more importantly, they get to meet the staff who live here all the time. And it's, you know, a unique experience for all of us, but the last day at D Hall is always the absolute most heart-wrenching moment of the entire course, because the staff comes out, the chefs come out, they've learned what all of these people's dietary restrictions are. I've sent very thorough details about we need to be out of here at a certain time on Friday so that we can make it to mosque and to other services. And all of you know D Hall, you know all of the staff here. They're incredibly accommodating, but they're also very interested in a personal connection. And it's something that surprised me, and it shouldn't. Every 3-4 week course that we had, that the last meal at D Hall was the one that involved 20 minutes of very long goodbyes and, you know, thank you for grilled cheeses, and what are these chicken tenders that I'm hearing about, and all of the crazy things that D Hall would put together for us. And it was just a remarkable time that it didn't matter that food is something that we would bond over. Obviously, it would be D Hall food here at JMU, which is phenomenal, but the connections that our students would make with the staff was just, it was always a unique time. And then to load them up on vans and take them back to Dulles, and Suzanne and I could finally relax that we haven't lost anybody.
Yeah, we managed to get through those courses, knock on wood, without losing too many of them. Not when they were in our care anyway, so maybe afterwards, but anyway, it was all very, very successful. And we did 10 of them at JMU, 4 at regional locations, 2 in Tajikistan, 1 in Croatia, 1 in Vietnam, and 3 that we assisted with in a major way in Amman, Jordan, that was actually run by the National Committee for Demining and Rehabilitation, and we provided the wonderful management instruction and some of the logistical support for those courses. So, okay. How's our time?
Got 10 more minutes.
Okay, let's do one more round, and any parting messages, and then we're going to move to question and answer, so we will have a chance to discuss a little bit more. But if you have one more remaining message to share tonight.
I think the message that I learned time and time again was about the importance of showing up, the importance of listening, and the importance of laughing. And that happened around the world with the team here and with all the partners that we've created.
I guess since I'm in faculty now, my message is for the JMU students is this field of conventional weapons destruction, humanitarian demining, whatever major you are, there's room for you in it. Sociology, most women landmine survivors are single. Their husbands or boyfriends have left them, regardless of your skin color, religion, nationality, rich or poor. If you're in economics, what do you do with reclaimed land? There's a big fight for reclaimed land. Does it go to the government? Does it go to the rich? Does it go to the original farmer? So land tenure. Business is a great way to alleviate poverty. political science, changing laws. I see some of my students in here. How do you change laws to bring justice and rights to post-conflict areas that are emerging or coming out of their revolutions or whatever? But it's a big A to Z, and I'll be happy to talk to any student here at JMU about how you can get involved and what you could do for your papers or your projects. Yeah, that's it.
I feel very fortunate and honored to have been a part of this over the years, and I feel that we're very fortunate to have Scissor here at JMU, carrying the JMU flag all over the world, and truly making a difference in the lives of people all over the world. And again, also I want to emphasize Dr. Rutherford's point to our students is you can make a lot of difference no matter how old you are by getting a little bit involved. And there is no better example than what Scissor does here every day, and what our amazing students have accomplished since. So please, talk to people at Scissor, Suzanne, Brenna, and I do believe it will make a lot of difference in your life, like it did in all of our lives.
Yeah, I think all of that's okay. Well, if I have a parting thought for you, I want to make some sense of what we're talking about here for the people in the room who are not, most of you are not 25. 25 seems like an eternity, and it's absolutely the blink of an eye. Before Scissor or this field was established with the help of Scissor, there was nothing. This was the kind of work that was done. It was the Wild West of humanitarian assistance. And Scissor and the community of practice that came around, that gathered around the work that Scissor put together on the basis of good information, is the heart of a university. It's research and practice, and it's sharing. And I can't stress enough how welcome you will be if you go to a landmine impacted country and tell them you went to JMU, because they will know who you are because of the people to my immediate left who made this happen. The community of practice for conventional weapons destruction did not exist. It would not exist in the form that it does today without the people who were up here and the work that they put in for 25 years. It was incredibly dangerous. It was incredibly haphazard. As a donor to that work, I would be very reluctant to fund it. And the kinds of activities that are being done were shaped at JMU. The health and safety and the resiliency of communities were shaped right here. And I think it's really important that we get that perspective on that, especially since so many of you are not yet 25. That it's been a Herculean task that was well done.
And I will say a little something here. I'm not on the panel, but I've been here all along, so I will indulge in a few comments. It's been just an amazing ride, and as Dr. Coxe was saying, it's just a blink of the eye, really, when I look back at the time that I spent with the center. And people ask me what I like the most about my job, and I've got to say people. The people I meet, the people I work with, directly work with at the center, the faculty partners, our partners in the other countries. We work with organizations. We always partner with other organizations when we go into another country. And so I work very closely with those other organizations, whether it's Muhammad Ibrahim Zola, whose face sometimes also appeared in that box in the window in Tajikistan to let us in. You know, he was the director of the Tajikistan National Mine Action Center. And Kamal Sadi in Jordan, and the people with AEPD in Vietnam, so the small NGO in Quang Binh province in central Vietnam. Just wonderful people that I had the great pleasure to work with and get to know. And then the people that we worked with our partners that we worked with in the larger communities as well. Whether it's the children that came to visit the plays that we love, like plays that we worked with local partners to produce and to perform for school children in Jordan in order to connect with them a little more effectively on how to be safe around landmines. And the people that we worked with in Vietnam, again in Quang Tri and Quang Binh, and so many places that I've had the pleasure of working. And then with the team at Scissor, which has evolved and changed over the years as people have graduated and moved on to other jobs, but we remain really tight. We actually were at Paige's wedding in May, and it was a great Scissor reunion. We had a whole bunch of former Scissor people that came to her wedding, and we had a little Scissor reunion there for Paige's wedding. So it's just been a very valuable, growing, and amazingly joyful experience. I say joyful because it's just been a wonderful people experience and a way of building community and getting to know so many people around the world. We'll stop there and entertain questions. Kara, can you get that one up there? Share around. Any questions here in the room? Come with the microphone.
Okay, thank you for all the explanation. I have a question about your criteria for choosing the countries that you go there, because I never heard about, for example, Afghanistan or some Southern American countries. Then what's your criteria?
We have worked, as Ken suggested, I didn't go into detail, we've worked in a lot of different countries, many of which we did not name tonight. We work in ones that are impacted by the presence of landmines and other unexploded ordnance and remnants of war, and ones where we are tasked to do certain projects in these countries. We've had many more countries where we've had senior managers that have come and taken courses with us. So many more countries than we have visited directly. We've had people from those countries come to us for that training. I think it's 58 total countries people were from that attended our senior managers course, either the ones in Jordan or the ones that we did here at JMU or our regional courses. So 58 different countries, we've had people from those countries in our senior managers courses. We've not done work in that many different countries directly, but we have connected with that many. Another question?
I just was concerned about, is Scissors global institution, or is it like supported by financially, or is it government-wide support?
Scissor is a center based here at JMU, so we're part of the JMU family, and we operate as a center here under the policies related to academic institutes and centers. We are largely externally funded, so we work on grants that come to the university to support our work. Our largest donor in the last dozen or more years has been the U.S. Department of State Office of Weapons Removal and Abatement, but we have done work for other U.S. government agencies, as well as some for the United Nations, some for the Organization of American States, for some NGOs and other partners, but with the United States Department of State being the number one donor to our center, but again, to do very specific projects. So it's not like they just come and support our center. It's like we're tasked to do some very specific projects, whether it's a mine risk education project, whether it's a training project, whether it's developing GIS technology to use to help identify cluster munitions in Vietnam. It's very specific task-oriented. Gary, do you want to say anything about how the State Department kind of does its thing?
Yeah, so Suzanne makes an interesting point, and to give a little bit of context, the Department of State is not a direct services organization. With the exception of visas and passports, the 20,000, 25,000 people who work at the State Department don't do anything. We do plenty. We do plenty. But in terms of going into communities and providing services with foreign assistance funding, we rely on partners like CISR. For landmine clearance, that's Mines Advisory Group, the Halo Trust. My portfolio in East Asia and Pacific every year is $70 million to various organizations in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, the Pacific Islands, to clear up explosive remnants of war. It also includes the side projects that improve that work, that help communities rebuild, that help us know where to find the landmines better, to make sure that taxpayer dollars are used effectively and efficiently. And so it's a partnership. I cannot go out and remove a landmine. I cannot go out and help a community achieve some stability and resilience after conflict. I go out and make sure the money got spent well, but we rely on the partnership here through various and other organizations to do it. And so we've worked with Scissor. I worked on a State Department grant when I started in 2005. We just signed a check for a new project in Laos to improve risk education, because we at the State Department, at the embassy, saw that casualties were going up and more kids were getting hurt, and I don't know why. And so Scissor will help me figure out why, and we will take the rest of our money and make sure that the risk education improves and that communities are safer. And so it's a balance. Suzanne talks about getting tasked to do things. Well, yes, but usually she comes to me with a very good idea. We work on it together, come up with a proposal, and then provide funding. So your taxpayer dollars are being applied not through the State Department, but through direct service organizations like Scissor here at JMU.
Any other questions?
Another thing, are you connected to NGOs in some other countries, or you go directly to communities there and work with them?
Scissor has a longstanding practice of partnering with NGOs and government entities in the countries where we work. We do not go in by ourselves and do the work. We always are doing it through partnership with a local organization. Sometimes it's an NGO, sometimes it's a government agency from that country, like the Tajikistan National Mine Action Center, right, that is running the mine clearance programs in Tajikistan. So we partner with them. We got a grant from the State Department to provide management training for people, not just in Tajikistan, but people from Central Asia, including Afghanistan and Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. There's various countries in that region. And then a few other related countries around there, Nepal 1 year, that sort of thing, to hold a regional course. And then we partner with the Tajikistan National Mine Action Center. They are a sub-awardee. They have certain responsibilities, certain things that they do. They have to make all the local arrangements with the hotel, sign the hotel contract. They arrange for the field visits out to where they're doing clearance, so that the people who are part of the course can see what they're actually doing in the field and learn from their practices, right? Go to visit a rehabilitation center, and we made a couple visits to rehabilitation centers. I'm looking at Dr. Rutherford because he was with me the last time we did that in Tajikistan. But it's through that local organization that we do our work. Can I add to that? Sure.
One of the things that's most impressive is the glue that JMU seems to be able to have, and it's relationship glue. I think it's about building trustworthy connections with people, and so whether we come in first with a partner who's an NGO or whether it's in a government entity, then we find out who are they already partnering with, or who might they want to partner with. All of that is to help with sustainability. So we know we're just a little blip on the screen. Even if we're there for several years, we're just a blip on the screen. And so we want to increase capacity of the persons who are there, and that's where we have to show up and listen very carefully to what their needs are, what the charge is from the Department of State, and then create something that's going to be meaningful. But the relationships that get established through JMU coming in are mighty.
I have a question for Dr. Stewart. Were you tempted or have done any programs that have assisted children in situations like the aftermath of the Sudan Civil War?
The aftermath of?
The Sudan Civil War?
No, I haven't had any opportunity to be present for that country. The elements about what happens after crisis and post-conflict are incredibly idiosyncratic and unique, and there are some common kinds of variables. You were mentioning some of them in terms of what needs to be integrated in terms of economics and in terms of political stability, and how you can find a place to be successful and begin to step. And that's one thing I found in the many different projects. I was mostly involved in field projects, but that was an indicator of success. If you could find a spot where you could determine a small and incredibly meaningful change that could take place to alleviate suffering, you got a lot of commitment to continue that change. So I would imagine that those kinds of principles would apply many places. That's been my experience. Do you happen to have connections there?
No, I was just
Okay.
Okay, I think we're about out of time. I think there's some last announcements I'm supposed to make here. Let me.
I think we have one more.
One more? Okay.
I had a comment. If there's any JMU students in here that are interested in working with Scissor and are interested in this topic, I'm part of a club called Dukes for Post-Conflict Recovery, and I know Kara talked about it at the beginning, and we work a lot with Scissor just to raise awareness for this. And I actually joined because I took one of Dr. Rutherford's class last year, and it's just very inspiring. And so if you're interested in working with us, just come see me after this.
Thank you. Yes, and actually you'll have a chance here. We're at the end of our time, and I thank you again very much for joining us this evening. I want to thank our panelists, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Rutherford, Dr. Musa, and Dr. Coxe for joining us tonight. I've heard some stories I think I had not fully heard before, and really enjoyed that. We have a light reception set up outside, no, actually right there. It was going to be outside, but the weather meant that we could not have it outside like we were planning on. But if you would like to stay around and chat a little bit, please do. And we'd love to meet you and maybe answer any additional questions you have for a few minutes here afterwards. But thank you again very much for joining us this evening.
And if you're here for a passport stamp, we have the nice ladies in the back of the room at the Center for Global Engagement who will get your stamps for you.